Thank you very much. With me, you get no films, no props, just me talking. Back in the day when I was a busboy at the Raleigh Hotel in the Catskill Mountains, I was in the kitchen picking up a Salisbury steak when the owner of the hotel said, "You want it on the phone." And it turned out it was a dean at Columbia University, where I just graduated, telling me that they had been invited by the Cuban government to send somebody to participate in the reopening of the University of Havana, which had been closed by Batista and was about to be reopened by Fidel Castro. But I had to show up in New York the next day in order to take advantage of this opportunity. So I handed my tray to the maitre d' and I took off my apron and I packed my stuff and I went to the city. And I was on an Air Cuba plane the next morning, and they put us up at the Hotel Nacional. And you can imagine I was all excited, and so I could barely sleep, and I got up early the next morning, and I went downstairs, and they had a tray of orange juice, so I took a glass, and I went out on the deck, and I was sitting there enjoying the weather in Havana and wondering how the hell I'd ever gotten there. And there's a woman, a very attractive woman, swimming in the swimming pool, laps. She gets out, and I recognize her. I realize I recognize her. So she starts walking in my direction, and she smiles at me, and she says, "Hello, young man." And I say, "Hello, Miss Gardner." And she said, "Oh, you know who I am?" I said, "Yeah, you're Ava Gardner." I said, "You're a famous movie star." "Aren't you sweet?" she says. And she sits down. She reaches over, she takes away my orange juice. And she's drinking my orange juice, and she says, "What's your name, and how old are you, and what are you doing here?" And we have this very nice conversation. And after about 10 minutes, she says, "Well, I've got to go change into something dry. I hope I'll see you again real soon." And she leaves. No sooner is she gone than I realize that her room key is sitting next to my empty orange juice glass. This is a story about opportunity. I was 18. This isn't as intimate as testicles, but I wasn't a virgin, but I wasn't an experienced hand either, and so I was a little intimidated, and I wasn't sure what to do about this key. So I went and got another orange juice, and then I sat there with the key for a few minutes, and to my everlasting shame, I handed it in at the desk. So this is a story, obviously, about missed opportunity. I am a man who has unfinished business with Ava Gardner, and I despaired when I read of her death, because I'm not sure if there's an afterlife, and if there isn't, I've missed it forever. And the thing is, what is it that I missed? I had a chance to meet Frank Sinatra. I tell this story to my freshman class, and most of the time it works, but I have to do a little spiel about who Ava Gardner was. My father was a man who sold life insurance for a living. And interestingly enough, the chief hinted at an aspect of my father's character. My father thought it was important that his clients, particularly his bigger clients, thought he was connected. And so he was known to be a guy who could fix a ticket. And on a regular basis, various of his larger clients would drop tickets off at the house and say, "Oscar, I wonder if you could take care of this for me." And my father said, "Not a problem. I know somebody at City Hall." And every Sunday, he'd sit there for about 20 minutes writing out checks and paying all these tickets. And it was worth paying the tickets to have the reputation of being connected. It was an interesting thing, and he thought it helped him with sales, that and driving a new car every year. I don't know if that's true, but it gives you an aspect of his personality. So one day, the phone rang. I was a young dean at Boston University at the time, and the phone rang, and my father said, your mother's tied up with a Hadassah event this weekend. I'd like to come visit you. Well, you can't turn your father down when he says that, and in any case, I'm an only child, and I couldn't palm him off on a brother or a sister. So I said, sure. So he came up. He promised he was going to be no trouble at all. Immediately he was trouble. He took my bed. I had to sleep on the couch. In any case, and he's an early riser, and so sure enough, at about 6:30 in the morning, he's up and making noise, trying to wake me up without trying to wake me up. And finally, I do get up, and he says, let's go get pancakes. So I get dressed, and I put all my shirts for the week in a pillowcase, and I tie a knot in the top of the pillowcase, and on the way to International House of Pancakes, I stop at the laundry, and I drop off the shirts. We get to the restaurant. My father orders, I order. My father looks very gloomy, and I'm a little worried that he looks so gloomy. And I say, Dad, is Mom all right? I mean, is this a serious visit here, or are you just hanging out? He said, well, I do have trouble. I'm troubled by something. And I said, what is that? And he said, I couldn't help but notice that when you dropped off your shirts, you didn't count them. I said, well, that's right. I didn't count them. It's actually a point of honor for me. He said, a point of honor? I said, yes, I have a philosophy about that. And he said, you have a philosophy about that? And I said, yes. And he said, would you tell me what it was? And I said, sure. I said, look, if you count the shirts, there were three possibilities. Let's assume you had 10 shirts. You counted the shirts. You had 10 shirts, dropped off 10 shirts at the laundry. There are three possibilities when you get the shirts back. You get 10 shirts back. If so, you got the same number of shirts that you gave in. You gave 10, you got 10. It was a waste of time counting them in, and it was a waste of time counting them out. The other alternative is you get 11 shirts back. Now you have an ethical problem. You have to go through the shirts. You have to figure out which is the worst shirt. You have to give that shirt back to the laundry. Or you get 9 shirts back, in which case you got to justify counting, so you go back to the laundry. The first thing that happens is you tell him you had 9 shirts, you gave him 10, you got 9. Immediately, he doesn't speak English. Secondly, he's got a sign up. The sign says he only gives you $10 for lost shirts. You spent $40 for the shirt. You're out $30. That's very annoying. You have some obligation, therefore, when you only get the 10 to be upset. You take your business to another laundry. The other laundry is further away, more expensive, inconvenient. You're sorry you ever got involved with this in the beginning. Moreover, I said to him, in the course of a lifetime, how many shirts can a guy lose? If you're diligent, you work at it, 10 shirts. 10 shirts, $30 a shirt, it's $300. The hell with the $300. My philosophy of life is the hell with the $300. I don't want to count the shirts going in or coming out. So my father says, you know, I've got a philosophy of life about that too. I say, really? He says, yes. I say, what is it? He says, it must be nice to have a rich father. I want to take a few of the minutes remaining to talk a little bit about higher education. We heard a lot about higher education yesterday. I'm not sure I agreed with everything I heard. But then again, I never do, even when I listen to myself. We have an educational system, both elementary and secondary and higher education, that's built on an agrarian model. It assumes that everybody has to go home periodically to help harvest the crop. It's not true, by the way. I don't know anybody at George Washington University, or very many, at other universities in the East, and probably even in the West, that go home to harvest the crop. And nevertheless, we closed the campus down May, June, July, and August. Now, the physical plant at George Washington University is worth about $2 billion. The notion that you would close down a $2 billion facility for 4 months flies in the face of rational thinking. And parallel to that is this calendar I get every year from the garage. I have my car serviced, and they send me a calendar, and it always has this very pretty girl in a bathing suit and it's got 12 months. And then I get the calendar from the university, and it starts in September, and it ends in May, and they're closed. There's no months there for May, June, July, and August. So it occurs to me that we ought to have at least a post-industrial model for the university calendar, and we ought to be open 12 months a year. Now, if we were open 12 months a year and getting maximum utility out of the physical plant and working something out with the professors so they still got time off for vacations and research and other sorts of things, you might even grow your faculty to accommodate to a 12-month calendar. You might even have your students be able to go through and get a BA degree in 3 years rather than 4 years. And now that the BA degree is costing $200,000, you could save them $50,000, which they could use as a down payment on a car. Which would be good for the economy without the help of the federal government. At any rate, there's something absurd about following these pastoral calendars. And yet, we are absolutely locked into it. I have tried for the better part of 20 years to induce the university faculty at George Washington University, and before that, at the University of Hartford, to go to a 3-year BA degree, the way, by the way, they are now increasingly doing in Europe. And people are absolutely convinced that the 4-year degree for the undergraduate diploma came down from God. It can't be changed. In fact, by the way, it's an accident. At the time that Harvard University was founded, the BA degree at Cambridge University was a 4-year degree. 3 years later, after the founding of Harvard, Cambridge switched to a 3-year BA degree. If Harvard had only waited 3 more years, let William and Mary get ahead of it, Harvard could be a pioneer these days with a 3-year BA degree. But instead, they're following Cambridge's old model of the 4-year degree. Cambridge has gone on to the 3-year degree, and since everybody in America copied their format from Harvard, we have 4-year BA degrees. This may have made more sense when people, frankly, stopped going to school after high school, maybe went on to college. But today, since most of the students who go to Harvard or George Washington University or other competitive universities are going on to do additional degrees, master's degrees, doctoral degrees, you can't become a pharmacist anymore today unless you get a doctor in pharmacy. When I was a kid, you got it with a bachelor's degree in pharmacy. So with that much education going on, query, couldn't we have a 3-year baccalaureate degree with the expectation that a very large number of people are going to go on and do graduate degrees later on in life, and are going to be doing continuing education of one sort or another in the professions or in life throughout their professional lives and throughout their personal lives. Additionally, we have to look at, it seems to me, the use of the campus. We ought to be using the campus 12 months a year. So if you had a 3-year baccalaureate degree and you had using the campus 12 months a year, you could save a fortune. That's one of the answers to the question, what are we going to do when the tuition gets beyond anybody's ability to pay for it? The other thing we have to look at, obviously, is the training of graduate students, the time to degree. This year, there will probably graduate hundreds and hundreds, perhaps as many as 600 PhDs in history in the United States, and maybe there are 60 or 70 tenure-track history professorships up for jobs in the country. We have an immense number of people who are spending a very long period of time earning degrees in disciplines for which there is no work. Moreover, their lifespan, their professional lifespan, doesn't justify spending as long preparing for that life as they do. So one of the questions we have to ask is it conscionable to spend 8 years getting a PhD? Can we do that degree in 6 years? And part of the question we have to ask is, what is it we are preparing people to do? The great percentage of those people who graduate with those degrees prepared for research careers do not, in fact, go on to research careers. They go on to teach in colleges with the names of Indian tribes in upstate New York, and they spend their lives grading History 101 exams, for which, frankly, a 4-year Doctor of Arts degree would be more than sufficient. The notion that every college professor wants to be a scholar, wants to be a researcher, is absolutely untrue. A very large percentage would like to be teachers. And the truth of the matter is, when you send your kid off to college, what you want is that he or she be exposed to teachers. We all like the idea that somebody, someplace is finding the cure for cancer. But I don't want that being done while they're supposed to be teaching my kid Biology 101. So I think we've got a consequential issue in restructuring, rebuilding the higher education system. Now, you say that's daunting, and indeed it is. We can only hope that somebody in some college or university in America that's prepared to change has been watching what's been happening to the media, to the journalism, to the print media, and recognizing that as newspapers go, perhaps so goes higher education. Just as healthcare is going to be completely restructured in the next couple of years, so will universities. But universities are perhaps more in denial than any other organization in society, and they are convinced that tenure will actually protect them from the big bad wolf outside their little brick houses. It's simply not true. And so to the extent that we can assist higher education, which is obviously an extraordinarily important component of our society, that it trains our young people, is something that we ought to be focused on. The other thing we ought to be focused on is who is deciding what we do and how we do it. We have a law school at George Washington University, an excellent law school. And it has, among other things, an evening program. And that evening program has been there for years and years and years, and goes back to the earliest days of the law school. And of course, evening law school programs are very important and have been, because they have made it possible for blue-collar workers, for people from the lower socioeconomic groups, to scramble up by going to school at night and get into the professional classes. But they are frowned upon. They are frowned upon by U.S. News and World Report. And so U.S. News and World Report insists on using the data, the SAT, LSAT scores, and the college grades of the evening law students, as well as the ones in the day program, to address and to predict the quality of the school. The correlation of that data to the quality of the lawyers that are about to be graduated from these law schools is unproven. And yet, all the law schools are intent on being highly ranked by U.S. News and World Report. So, GW Law School, which is determined not to be ranked 28th in the country, but to be ranked 20th in the country. They'd like to be first, but they've given up first to Harvard. And then there's Yale, and then there's Chicago and the University of Pennsylvania. So there are probably 15 schools that it's impossible to catch up with. But you could be 15th if you really worked hard at it. The question then is, what do you do to get there? And one of the things they're now doing is killing off or diminishing the size of the evening program, which I object to, and since I'm no longer president, I can't do anything about it, so I'm here talking about it. And it offends me that a guy named Bob Morse, who puts these charts together and publishes them in U.S. News and World Report, is functionally driving the decisions that are being made by my law school, by George Washington University Law School, and I suspect law schools all over the country. How did we become so outer-directed that we're allowing this magazine to tell us how to run our schools? And if they tell us how to run our law schools, will they tomorrow impose on our academic capacities to tell us how to do our bachelor's degrees? Hell, the only person who ought to be doing that is me. And so I'm troubled by what I am seeing in this circumstance. I want to close by telling one short story, a short story. I see I'll get a red light. I have a son. When he was about 5, my wife had cooked dinner and sent us downstairs to the basement to bring up a bottle of wine. And so I went down and I picked out a nice bottle of wine and I turned around and I said, Adam, I want you to carry the bottle of wine upstairs. Be very careful. It's an expensive bottle of wine. He said, okay. I give him the bottle of wine. No sooner does he get it into his hands, he drops the bottle of wine. It hits the ground, breaks. It's all over, poured all over the floor. I got mad. And I lifted my hand to smack him. Fortunately, before I smacked him, I looked at his face and I could see the dismay in his face. I put my hand down and I picked him up and I hugged him to my chest. And I had his head, he was looking over my shoulder, and I said, Adam, how many bottles of wine are there in this room? And he said, a lot. And I said, and how many atoms? And he said, 1. I said, great, as long as you understand that. And I put him down. I took another bottle of wine off. I gave it to him again. And I said, now don't drop this one. And he took it upstairs, and we had dinner and drank the bottle of wine. 25 years later, he was about 30. We were in Costa Rica together, some little town, and the two of us went off to have dinner in a restaurant. We were the only customers, and after we had this magnificent meal, the two of us sat there with our feet up, looking out at the ocean, smoking cigars, and he brought up that occasion. And it turns out, unbeknownst to me, it's one of the defining experiences of our relationship. And I thought, damn, you know, if I hadn't just looked at him, I would have brought my arm around and smacked him. And our entire interaction, our entire narrative would have been totally different. So all I'm suggesting is, before you smack your kid, sit down, have a glass of wine. Thank you all.